Yeah. So date 10th June 2024. This is the timing. So today we are going to talk about something core of the React. What is the React exactly? That we will talk about. So few things we have seen. So we have seen components, JSX, conditional rendering, what are the props, rendering the list, right? So these things we have seen. Now it's a time to talk about what React is. So I will ask few questions. So if you see here, we have created one HTML. See, something is happening internally. In the earlier cases, if you remember, we have created multiple HTML pages. Yes or no? In your project, if you see this is your BCM project, you have this HTML and its JS separately. The dashboard, its HTML separately. Login, its HTML and its JS separately. And the index HTML is separately. So can you show me in your React project, where are the multiple pages, or where are the multiple HTMLs? Can you find multiple HTMLs in the React? Hello? Can you find multiple HTMLs in the React? Am I audible? So only one HTML you can see over here. There are no other HTMLs. Now what is this something new? Why React is having only single HTML? Why React is having only single HTML? Because React falls under something called as SPA. What is SPA? Can you tell me? Hello? Single page application. Single page applications. Hello? Am I audible? You're not audible.
Yes, sir.
Now, now when you talk about the React, it is the single page application. So there would be only one HTML. There would be only one HTML. And other things, like you are loading a side navigation bar, you are adding one main navigation bar. That things are happening by means of the DOM. That things are happening by means of what? DOM. You getting my point?
Yes, sir.
But you are not handling that DOM. Who is handling that DOM? That DOM is handled by the framework called as React. Correct? One of the framework called as React. So React has internally something called as React Fiber. What is that? React has something called as React Fiber. It is nothing but this, and this fiber, well, this is the documentation. React Fiber is the way of handling DOM internally. Well, now this is the older post, right? 8 years ago. Now React Fiber is what you can say in place. It is working. Or you can see something called as virtual DOM. Now, the DOM, the DOM is just one of the rendering environment of the React can render to. The other major targets being native iOS, Android, views via React Native. That's why virtual DOM is a bit of Zomer. The reason it can support many targets because React is designed so that reconciliation and the rendering are the separate phases. So internally, how React works? Internally, how React works? That is nothing but what the React fiber is. That is nothing but what the React fiber is. But presently, you don't need to know the internals. It is just happening. It is just happening because of the React DOM, right? It is happening because of what? React DOM. React DOM is the library. Remember that? React reference overview. So when you talk about the React, you are talking about the hooks, components, APIs, directives. When you talk about the React DOM contains the features that only support the web applications, which runs in the browser. So this part not running only in the browser, but this part running only in the browser. Hooks, components, APIs, client APIs, server APIs, right? And we are going to learn these things. But internally, remember that React is nothing but a classified DOM manipulation. Who is doing DOM manipulation? React is doing DOM manipulation internally. So React Fiber is the internal implementation, a re-implementation of the React's core algorithm. React Fiber is the re-implementation of the React core thing, right? So when you talk about the virtual DOM, you can read it over here. See, what is the virtual DOM? The virtual DOM is a programming concept where an ideal or the virtual representation of the UI kept in memory and synced with the real DOM. So you would be having all the so you in a React you don't do document.getElement by ID directly, but in a memory your DOM structure is stored. So in memory this DOM structure is stored, and then this DOM structure is actually replaced or implemented in the actual DOM. So React never calls DOM API directly. React never calls the DOM API directly, but instead of that, React calls something called as virtual DOM, right? Virtual DOM. This approach, see here, a virtual DOM is a programming concept where an ideal or the virtual representation of the UI is kept in memory and synced in with the real DOM with the library such as React DOM. So what is this library doing? React DOM, if you see in the package.json, we have added something called as React DOM. So this library is updating your UI to the actual DOM. So this approach enables the declarative API of the React. Declarative API means this JSX. Because of this, so here you are not directly writing into the DOM like document.createElement. Here you are not doing. You are doing it in the virtual DOM, and the virtual DOM is taking care of adding these things to the actual DOM. Okay. This approach enables the declarative API of the React. You can tell what You can tell what state you want the UI to be in and make sure the DOM matches the state. This abstract out the DOM attribute manipulation, event handling, and manual DOM updating that you would otherwise have to do for building your app. You have done this thing, manual DOM, yes or no? Manual event handling, you have done this thing. Attribute
Yes, sir.
manipulation, you have done this thing. So in the React, you will make sure that you will never write document.createElement, document.append child, something like that. You will not write it. Since the virtual DOM is a more pattern than the specific technology, people sometimes say it to mean a different things. In the React world, virtual DOM is usually associated with the React elements, since they are the objects representing the user interface. React elements means these things. Okay. React, however, also uses the internal objects called as fibers to hold the additional information about the component tree. They may also consider the part of the virtual DOM implementation in the React. So they forget about this thing. What is the React fiber? Fiber is the new reconciliation engine in the React 16. Its main goal is to enable the incremental rendering of the virtual DOM. Incremental rendering of virtual DOM. So we understood what do you mean by virtual DOM and how things are exactly happening. So what I suggest you is that if you wanna learn more about the virtual DOM, you Google it and you will get it lot of things. So what we learned today, React is a SPA, single page application technology, which means that there is only one HTML you have with, right? And rest is whatever JSX files you see, that is the virtual DOM. You are writing it into the virtual DOM, and React DOM library, this library, is taking care of adding it to the actual DOM. So who is doing DOM manipulation? Remember that people say we don't do DOM manipulation. You do, but with the help of React DOM library. Getting my point? There is a DOM manipulation, but who is doing? React is doing. Okay. Now, so this is about the what is React. Now let's come back to our actual part of the components. Keeping components pure. So some JavaScript functions are pure. Pure functions only perform the calculation and nothing. By strictly only writing the components are pure, you can avoid an entire class of baffling the bugs and unpredictable behavior as your code base grows. To get these benefits through, there are few rules. Right? There are few rules. Now, your components must be pure. Means that they will just perform whatever they have been asked. In the computer science, a pure function is a function with the following characteristics. It minds the own business, same input, same output. Take an example of this. Number and 2 into number. So it is not doing anything. Now see, it minds its own business means it do not change any object or variable that existed before it was called. It will not change anything outside these brackets. Same input, same output. Given the same input, pure function will always return the same output. For given number of inputs, it will always give the same output. In the above example, double is a pure function. If you pass 3, it will return 6 always. Now, this component, a recipe, in the above example, double is a pure function. React is designed around this concept. React assumes that every component you write is a pure function This means that React components you write must always return the same JSX for given input. So these are the props. If you have given these props, the recipe component should return the same output. There is no change. There is what? No change. You could think of the components as a recipes. You give some input, it will give you some output. Now there is something called as side effects. Now what do you mean by this? Is very very important thing, side effect. Now here if you see, React rendering process must always be pure. Remember that pure means what? It will mind its own business. The function will mind its own business. For the same inputs, it will give the same output. Now see, there is a something called as, okay, day 95, and here only I will change it. Say rename 96. Day 95, 96. So here pure.jsx. Pure.jsx. So function, we can say simple pure. So for the same output, so here I can say these are the props and msg, and we are going to return h1 msg, right? So for some kind of message, it will always return the h1 with the same data. That is called as a pure function. And concept of React is this, that this function will not do anything other than this. But there is one variable, let a is equals to 10. Let a is equals to what? 10. Now inside this function, if you try to make a as 90, this thing is called as side effect. What this thing is called as? Side effect. See now, what is the side effect? React's rendering process must always be pure. Components should only return the JSX and do not change any object or the variable that existed before the rendering. That would make them impure, right? The component is reading the guest and writing to the guest. Now see, you have created a guest over here and you are trying to update the guest over here. This means that calling this component multiple times will produce the different JSX. And what's more, if other components read the guest, they will produce the different JSX too. So depending upon what they were rendered, this is not predictable. This is not predictable. And this thing is called as side effect. This is a bad. Purity, we have seen what React is and what React should do. React components should do. Remember this line very carefully. React rendering process must always be pure, meaning that components should return their JSX and not change any objects or the variables that existed before rendering. That's make them impure. If do that thing, they are impure. So here, can you see bad? You are this is a pre-existing variable and you are trying to change it over here. This means that calling this function multiple times will produce a problem to this component to this component and to the other components also who are accessing this guest, right? Now you need to pass it as a prop, one thing. Now your component is pure as JSX returns only depends on the guest prop, right? So instead of this, how you should write it? Export function simple pure prop, and here we can say MSG and that A, that MSG and that A, and it should not modify the A, remember that. Rather it should simply use the A. It should not modify the value of A. Okay, now see here. Now you can see detecting the impure calculation with the strict mode. Can you see in the beginning we write in the main, can you see react.strict mode? React.strict mode. There are multiple use cases of this strict mode. What this strict mode does, although you might not have used them all yet. Now, yeah, see here, the strict mode has no effect in production. So whatever we have written over there, strict mode. So it won't slow down your apps users. To opt the strict mode, you can wrap the root element into the react.strict mode. Strict mode. Now see here, React offers a strict mode in which it calls the components function twice during the development. By calling the component function twice, strict mode helps find the components break these rules, right? Means React, what it internally it is going to happen, it is going to call this simple pure function 2 times, and it will see what is going to happen. It is going to call, when you add this thing, all the components are called 2 times, and it will check is there any side effect or not. Okay, now when you want to change something in response to the user or output input, you should use the state instead of writing it to the variable. We'll see this. You should never change the pre-existing variables or the object. See, you should never change the pre-existing variables or the object while your component is rendering. So this is bad. This is really bad. You shouldn't do this thing. You shouldn't do this thing. Okay. React offers a strict mode in which it calls each component function twice during the development. And see, strict mode has no effect in the production. Whenever you deploy this application on the production, strict mode is useless. This will not work. So today you got to know what do we mean by strict mode. Yes or no? Hello?
Yes, sir.
So pure functions only calculate so by calling them twice. If it change anything, it is good. If it changes something, that is bad. So strict mode has no effect on the production, so it won't slow down the app for your users. To opt the strict mode, you can wrap your root element into the strict mode. So to handle the side effect like this, to check if something is bad is happening, you need to have the strict mode. There are few more uses of the strict mode we will see. Now see the local mutation. What do you mean by this? In the above example, the problem was that the component changed the pre-existing variable while rendering. This is often called the mutation. But it sounds a bit scarier. The pure functions don't mutate the variable outside the function scope. See, pure functions don't mutate means change the variables outside the function scope or the object that were created before the call. That's make them impure. It's completely fine to change the variables and the objects that are just created while rendering. So if you have created an array and if you want to change the array inside that, that is okay. So which means that you have one variable over here. Let abc is equals to abc is equals to 90, abc is equals to 90, and here you can check if a is less than 10, you can make abc is equals to 89. This is called as local mutation. So this let variable is created inside this bracket, right? This let variable is created inside this bracket, and you are changing this thing is the local mutation. This thing is called as what? Local mutation. Now where can you cause, where you can cause the side effect? While the functional programming relies heavily on the purity at the some point, somewhere something has to change. That kind of point of the programming, these changes, the updating the screen, starting an animation, changing the data, are called the side effects. See, while functional programming relies everything, functional programming means, can you tell me what is functional programming? If you remember, we have seen the concept. Functions can be passed as parameters, functions assigned to the variable, function can be written from another function, is called as functional programming. Remember or not? Hello?
Yes, sir.
So while the functional programming relies heavily on the purity, at some point, somewhere, something has to change. So we cannot, which means that if you have to do this thing at some point. In your React component, you have to do this thing at the some point. You cannot avoid all the time. You have to do this thing at the some point. These things, these changes, updating the screen, starting an animation, changing the data, are called side effects. They are the things that happen on the side, not during the rendering. So whenever this thing is getting called and React is showing the component, is called as rendering. But a is equals to 10 is not a part of rendering. A is equals to 10 is not a part of rendering. That is happening in a sideways. And that's why that thing is called as side effect. In the React, side effects really belong inside the event handlers. So event handlers are the function that React runs when you perform some action. For example, you click the button. Even though event handlers define inside the component, they don't run during the rendering. So event handlers don't need to be pure. If you have exhausted all the options and you can't find the right way to handle the side effect, if you have exhausted all the options, so at certain point in time, you have to change the data outside. And you tried all the things, but you have to change it. Then React gives something called as use effect. If you exhausted all the options and can't find the right event handler for your side effect, you can still attach and return JSX with the use effect call. While, see, this is the last option. You should avoid as much as doing this thing. But this is the last option. When possible, try to express your logic with the rendering alone. You will be surprised how far it can take you. Remember that you need to avoid the side effect as much as possible. But there are certain cases you need to do it, there is no option. At that time there is something called as use effect, and how to do that we will see. Okay, hello.
Yes, sir.
So about the React we are talking, we have first talk what is React single page application, virtual DOM, React Fiber. Then how your component should behave. This is the behavior of the component. What component is, for this given input it should produce the same output all the time. For the given input it should produce the same output all the time. It should not change anything outside the function, pure function. Okay, now your UI as a tree. Your UI as what? Tree. Understanding your UI as a tree. Your React app is taking the shape with many components being nested into each other. So if you see here, everything is nested. If you see list, to-do list we have, right? And inside list we are having LIs. So we can create another component for this LI. That is also possible. React keep a track of your app's component structure. React and many other UI libraries. Thinking of your app as a tree, useful for understanding the relationship between the components, which means that look at here. So component A, component B, component C. So inside component A, B and C are the children of A. So this is the tree in the virtual DOM. This is the tree in the virtual DOM. So if you make a change in B, right, only this node would be getting changed. If you make change in A, this tree won't be getting changed, but only this subtree would be getting changed, right? Trees are the relationship between items, and the UI often represented as a tree structure. For example, browsers uses the tree structure HTML DOM and the CSS DOM. Mobile platform uses the tree to represent their native view hierarchy. Correct? Now you should create the component tree. You should create what? The component tree. And that component tree is presented in a memory as a tree only, itself as a tree only. That component tree itself has what? Tree. So here the major feature of the component is to ability to compose the components of the other components. As we nest the components, we have the concept of parent and child components, where each parent component may itself be a child of another, which means that, see here, the fancy text, the fancy text here, if you can see, yeah. So inspiration generator is a child of app. Inspiration generator is a child of app. The fancy inspiration generator is a child of app. The fancy text is a child of inspiration generator. Color is also child of inspiration generator. Now here is a conditional rendering. This thing is the conditional rendering, inspirational generator. Now just a minute. So what the page is saying, that your UI, same thing. So this is the component tree. That same tree is represented in the React DOM. And the React DOM is responsible for React DOM is responsible for maintaining your components in the memory. Correct? And that's why you should create what you can say a tree structure of the components. Also, we have seen passing down the props to the end child. So if you want to pass the props to the fancytext.js, so you need to start passing it from the app.js, inspiration generator.js, and then fancytext.js. So props are getting passed down in this way, right? Now, next part is about the state management and the hooks that we will see tomorrow. Okay, do not miss the session and join the sessions on time. Okay, do not miss the sessions
Yes, sir.
and join the sessions on time. Hence, from now, extremely important things would be getting covered. So it's your responsibility to attend the session on time. Okay, let's call it for a day. We'll meet tomorrow. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.